Hey everyone, I'm back, and today we're going to be talking about Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And this movie is directed by Zack Snyder and stars Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, Jesse Eisenberg, Amy Adams, Gal Gadot, Jeremy Irons. And I saw this movie once in theaters, and I literally have never seen it before because I wasn't eager to ever rewatch the film ever again. And it was just on Netflix, and I decided, you know what, I'll give this a shot. I just rewatched Man of Steel, and I guess since this one's also on Netflix, I'll watch this one as well. And who knows, is this going to be better or worse than Man of Steel? And I would say it's a little bit worse than Man of Steel, personally. And unfortunately, I didn't really like this one either. It was just really dumb and stupid, and had some good things in it, like there were some good performances in this movie. I liked Ben Affleck in the movie. I think he was like actually trying in this movie, and that's why I kind of appreciate him as Batman. And you can see in the interviews that he gives for this movie before it was released that he has some like energy to him, and he is actually kind of like excited to talk about the movie. And once the movie came out, it's pretty well known that it made him sad that it wasn't really liked by too many people. And I will never forget all the Ben Affleck Batman puns that were made about this movie. Like at the time of this movie's release, I heard sad Affleck because of him being sad about it. And as Batman, I've heard the term Batfleck, which some people find amusing. I'm not sure if that was just the generally speaking, people called him that, or if that was just one person. I think it was the Flick Pick who called him that first, but I could be wrong about that. And like the first movie, I like the music in the film. I think that it's effective on its own in the movie. I don't think it works because it's not really complimenting much. And the reason I say this is that because I'm not attached to what's going on in the film, it does come across as manipulative in a way that I find distracting. So it's nice to hear good music over these less than good scenes. I just wished it was in service of something that I liked. And speaking of the music, there was a scene that I forget where it's taking place, but I noticed that it was the scene where Bruce Wayne was talking to Wonder Woman, and they were like at a fancy party, and you can hear subtly in the background they're playing the theme from Eyes Wide Shut. I didn't notice that the first time I watched it, and that was something that I noticed this time while watching it. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, I wasn't expecting that. I don't know, it was just nice to hear it. I forget what it's actually called or who composed it. And that's about all of my positives that I have for this movie. Like, sure, there are some effective performances in the film, like Lawrence Fishburne is kind of funny in the movie. Jeremy Irons is pretty good as Alfred, and Henry Cavill is a good Superman. Like, I buy him as the character, mostly from his physical performance and how he portrays the character physically. And Amy Adams as Lois Lane, not much to her character. She doesn't really have much to do. She's mostly investigating a bullet that she retrieved from the desert that she just is trying to figure out where it's from. And there's that going on. And there's a lot of subplots in this movie. And overall, the main storyline, and I say storyline because the plot is pretty convoluted, and I don't even know what the actual story or plot of the movie is. And everything just gets so convoluted after a while. It starts to get like kind of funny in a sense. I was like, what am I supposed to like be rooting for here? Because I don't really like any of the characters, and there's nothing really to get behind here. Like, the only thing that you can kind of get behind, Batman being prepared to take on Superman if he is like a threat, just on the possibility of him being a threat if he decides to turn on humanity. And like, that's literally all this movie has going for it. And Just that alone isn't really enough to justify actually going after Superman to kill him, in my opinion, because it doesn't scream Batman to me. Like I would have preferred him to like go through this like through evidence and to have like an interesting story going on with him, but no, not here. I do like the Batsuit in this movie. It does look cool, looks pretty comic booky, and Batman is mostly in the dark in this movie, which I think is a good thing, because whenever he's in broad daylight, which happens once in a dream sequence, it looks very goofy, but for the most part, I think he looks cool, and it's a good design, and the dream sequences in this movie are completely unnecessary and sometimes may add to the comedy of this film. And when I say comedy, I mean unintentional comedy, because there's very little intentional comedy in this movie. Like, there is only one intentional joke in this movie that I laughed at, and that was from Lawrence Fishburne trying to find Clark Kent at the Daily Planet. Like, he had something he wanted to ask him about, and he was missing because obviously went Superman and just flew out, and he's like, Clark, where does he go? Where does he go? I was like, that was kind of funny. The first 10 minutes are unintentionally hilarious for me, and the last hour of the movie is pretty funny, honestly. And it just gets so ridiculous and stupid. I'm constantly laughing at it. There's one kind of fun action scene towards the end with just Batman in a warehouse, and that was kind of fun to watch. Now, there's a lot of things that I've said already that might make this movie sound, at the very least, moderately bearable. Unfortunately, I haven't really gotten to at least half of what this movie actually is, and that's a political thriller as to whether or not Superman is a threat or not, because they're addressing what happened in Man of Steel and all that destruction, and they're trying to decide what should we do about him. And that's half of this movie, and it's so boring, and it's unnecessary as well. And there's also literally a scene where something happens and it's a bad thing, and Superman is not taking this well, and he decides to just quit being Superman. And, like, I don't know, not even 15 minutes of screen time go by, and he's back. And there was, like, no impact there at all. And the reason why I bring this up is because they do a similar thing in Spider-Man 2, but in Spider-Man 2, like, ignoring the fact that I was much more engaged with that movie and actually attached to the story and the characters, the reason why it has more of an impact in that movie when Peter Parker decides to quit being Spider-Man is because it lasts longer, so you can see how much of an effect it actually has on the story and the characters. And when he comes back, then there's an actual impact, because yes, the hero is back. He wants to be Spider-Man, and there's the impact. But in this movie, it's just almost nothing. Like, it might as well just be nothing. But also, going back to the movie being a political thriller, it just honestly feels like the subplot in the Jurassic World movies of militarizing velociraptors. It's like, who asked for this? Why does this need to be in the movie? It's just eating up screen time. And you want to see Batman fight Superman. And most of the movie is Batman not fighting Superman. And most of the movie is not the Dawn of Justice. So, I honestly don't even know what else to add to just that point. And much like Man of Steel, I don't really care for the look of the film. It just doesn't look interesting to me. It's like, I like that it's dark because it helps out the look of Batman. Like, Batman looks better when he's in the dark. But everything else, it doesn't complement the film. And one of the biggest issues that I have with this movie, and what a lot of people had with this movie when it came out, was Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, I don't buy him as the character. He's just being Jesse Eisenberg in other movies that I've seen him in. It's kind of like, in a sense, a mix between his character from The Social Network, Mark Zuckerberg, and what he plays in other roles. And it just doesn't work. It's like trying to be funny and goofy and serious all at the same time, and it does not fit in this movie at all. And going back to the dream sequences of them just being unnecessary, they don't give you a good understanding of what's going on inside Bruce Wayne's head. They're just random things. There's the Man-Bat cameo. There's a cameo of the Flash. There's like hints and teases of what's to come that I believe did not happen because of behind the scenes drama. And I'll get more onto that later, but in retrospect, it just feels like the movie's wasting even more time because you're not even getting like a resolution to a lot of these things. And I forgot to bring up that in this movie, Batman is actually killing people, and that was a huge issue that a lot of people had with this movie at the time. In this movie, it literally doesn't explain why he's doing that at all. And maybe they explain that in the Ultimate Edition, the 3-hour long version that's also rated R. And apparently it goes a bit more in depth with a few things, but all in all, I'm just not really interested in watching that version because I don't know if it's going to be more enjoyable for me. Sadly, the CGI in this movie doesn't really hold up, and that's really a big problem for me in this movie, especially in the third act when there's basically CG everywhere. And for one specific character who I cannot name, like there's no practical shots of a certain character that shows up in the third act. And also, this movie has really bad pacing. Like, I was just watching the film and just feeling kind of bored. And I took note as to at what point we were like getting close to like some kind of resolution to this movie being a political thriller that was like halfway through. And that was like an hour and 20 minutes into the movie. And at that point, things are just starting to happen, which means you have everything before that and nothing has happened yet. Oh my God. I'm being forced to just wait patiently for something to happen, and I'm getting none of it. Like, all of the stuff that you pay to see is in the last hour of this movie, like in Man of Steel. All of the action is in the last hour of both of these movies, and man, is it a chore to get there. But luckily, it gets pretty funny. Like, there were actual moments that I legitimately loved, like just laughing at the movie. Like, just like Man of Steel, I was able to enjoy this movie somewhat ironically, and I had a good time in the last hour, and it was pretty funny. And the first 10 minutes were pretty funny as well. And also, just like Man of Steel, nothing makes any sense, because characters make really stupid decisions, and if certain things were just changed slightly, like if Superman used his like see-through vision, like maybe he could solve certain things, or just use his ears better, or anything, use his brain, then about, I would say 90% of the issues that this movie was getting would have been solved just from Superman alone, because it doesn't really do a whole lot in the movie. One of my favorite moments in this movie is you see early on in the movie that there's a guy who gets crushed by like a thing and he can't move his legs anymore, and his legs are amputated. I mean, you don't see that procedure, like him losing his legs, but it just cuts to him in a wheelchair, and he starts climbing up a Superman statue, like just with his arms, and he starts with a hand, and he gets all the way to Superman's chest and spray paints false god. And I was loving that scene because I was just thinking in my head, I would love it if at any point he was like climbing onto the fingers, because that's what he got to first because of how the statue was positioned. Like if he was climbing on that, either he just slipped or the statue, like the fingers of the statue, just broke off. I was like, whoop! He just fell. So that would have been so funny. And I was just thinking, why does it have to be on the statue of Superman's chest? Can't you just spray paint it on a place where it's very easily accessible for you? And also, you had to have jumped to like get to Superman's statue hand, right? Like, I could be wrong, but like, really? And also, just like in Man of Steel, the characters kind of just feel invincible. I never really get a sense of pain. And to some extent, it's communicated a bit better in this movie. And also, one thing that was improved in this movie as opposed to Man of Steel, in the action scenes, you don't really get any camera zooms. That was much appreciated. And you get a little bit of a sense of pain in a couple moments. And also, there's one thing I need to mention about Lois Lane. There's an item that she throws away, and then shortly after, she has to go get it back. But in order for her to do that, she would have had to have someone to have told her to go get this item back, and no one did, and she just telepathically knew to do that. And yeah, that was confusing. That wasn't communicated well to me at all, and I just did not understand what was going on there. And I almost forgot that this movie basically has 3 different endings. I was like, what is this movie doing? Like, why is this so long? Why is this 2.5 hours long? Why is this longer than Man of Steel? Like, I couldn't imagine watching the Ultimate Edition, because as funny as this movie was at certain points, I don't know if I could sit through a 3-hour long version of this movie. I might one day, but man, this was a chore to sit through at points. So, all in all, very stupid, seriously toned film for no reason, and it's very dumb and just does not succeed at anything it's trying to do. And one thing that I wanted to mention, going back to like future plans that this movie had tried to start when I was talking about the dream sequences in this film. I don't know if this is the exact starting point to say this, but I'll say, like, arguably, and I'll explain myself shortly. And for me, the way that I see it is this movie was kind of the start of the decline for the DC universe, in a sense, because this movie took 3 years to make, and there went through a bunch of rewrites, and it originally was supposed to come out in 2015, but it was delayed like a few months, all the way up until March of 2016. And they were also hoping that this movie was going to gross over $1 billion, but sadly that didn't happen. It still, I think, made money. I don't know if it was profitable or not. I know Justice League wasn't, like the 2017 one, Justice League, as some people like to call it. But the point that I'm trying to make here is there was a lot riding on this movie being successful, but with it not reaching what they wanted it to, they kind of had to scrap some of their plans for the future, I believe. Who knows? I could be wrong about this, but this is the story from what I've gathered. But anyways, that's about all I have to say about Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Or the theatrical cut, to be more specific. If you're looking to watch a superhero movie that's 2.5 hours long, somewhat ironically, then this is a movie for you. Everyone else, no. I wouldn't recommend it otherwise. It's not a good action movie. The characters aren't good. And the story is all over the place, and it just has so many problems. Honestly, I haven't even covered everything because I'm trying to keep this video spoiler free. Yeah, definitely a lot more to say about this movie, but that'll be in a spoiler video, which isn't really necessary because even if I were to spoil it, there isn't too much else to say about it. So, all in all, not good. Pass for anyone who wants to watch it seriously. So, with all that being said, I'm going to give Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice a 4 out of 10. I know that's the same rating I gave Man of Steel. I did enjoy Man of Steel a bit more, like, ironically speaking. And it was slightly shorter for me, and it was more entertaining. Whereas this movie, it did have some pretty hilarious stuff in it, which I didn't even mention. But yeah, all the funny bad stuff for me, for the most part, is in the last hour of the film. And everything leading up to that, it's either kind of funny, boring, funny, boring. Not in that particular order, but you're just waiting for a moment to be really funny, is how I felt the entire time. Thank you for watching my videos. As always, if you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like and comment down below you thought of Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, whether it be the theatrical cut or the Ultimate Edition. Just specify which version you've seen and which one you're talking about. Because I've never seen the Ultimate Edition, and like I've said earlier, don't really plan to, but who knows, maybe I will one day. And I also believe the Ultimate Edition has a version that's like where the aspect ratio is 4:3 or something. I just thought I'd throw that out there. So, anyways, my social media links, they will all be in the description, so follow me there. And last but not least, subscribe to be a part of Foley Nation, and I'll see when I get my next review up, and that is going to be for Robin Hood, Men in Tights. So look forward to that, but until I get that up, thank you for watching and have a great day. There's also literally a scene where something bad goes wrong, and... Something bad goes wrong. Sorry.